The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting live from the UK and across the world online. You're now listening to the UK's only live alternative late night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next 3 hours, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On tonight's show, I'm joined by Anna Hunt, who will be sharing her personal journey from life crisis to inner peace. Anna went on a life-transforming journey, from being a Cambridge graduate and a celebrity interviewer for one of the highest-selling newspapers in Britain, to the untouched wildness of the Amazon rainforest in a bid to find inner peace. On the second half of the show, I'll be speaking to Mystic Pete, who's a radio host, author, and true mystic. Mystic Pete has worked diligently to defy and codify the mystical experiences, and he now teaches others how to enter into the transcendental meditation on their own. Now that's coming up on the second half. The phone lines will be open on the second and third part of each interview for you to interact with our guests. We are live every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. That's British Summer Time. And that's Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in America. Now I'm joined with Anna Hunt, who went on a life-transforming journey from being a Cambridge graduate and a celebrity interviewer for one of the highest-selling newspapers in Britain, to the untouched wildness of the Amazon rainforest in a bid to find inner peace. Let's hear her full journey. Good morning, Anna.
Hi there, Kev.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you on, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Anna, which newspaper did you work for prior to your transformation?
I worked for a number of nationals in the UK, culminating in working for the Mail on Sunday, based in London.
Okay. And, this was what, your sort of dream job before graduation, or when once you graduated, you knew you wanted to get into the media?
Yeah, I think probably before I went to uni. I always loved writing, and I guess that crystallised with age, probably around kind of GCSEs A-level time, into thinking that journalism is something I would enjoy. And yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was working as a celebrity interviewer in London, which as we all know is one of the great capital cities of the world, I really felt, I'd worked very hard to create a life which I'd always wanted for myself.
Yeah. And would you say you was pretty happy, pretty content at the time with what you were doing?
In terms of my kind of day-to-day life, I think journalism is a phenomenal career. I'm sure you'd agree, actually, but I think interviewing people and hearing about people's stories and writing about people is utterly fascinating. And what the Mail on Sunday gave me was great exposure. I had a great platform to be able to interview really interesting and people who were kind of at the top of their game, whether it was as an actor, actress, or, I don't know, a racing car driver, Formula One, or a writer or an events organizer, whoever. People who were really performing to a high level had a lot of passion, a lot of drive, a lot of wisdom to share. And I think interviewing those kinds of people is deeply inspiring. And my job was fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think people's stories are important, and like you say, when you've reached that kind of level, with some of the people that you've interviewed, I think there is wisdom there. And for example, who did you interview?
I interviewed a lot of people, from models like Jerry Hall, through to sports people like Rio Ferdinand, through to actors, some of the top musicians in the world. I mean, big A-list stars, Angelina Jolie, big names, household names.
Absolutely. And did you ever do any spiritual interviews as such? I mean, did that sort of language ever enter your interviews, or?
No. And, I think that taps into quite an interesting point, because when I was doing this work, we're talking kind of through the 90s and into the kind of, 2000 up to 2004 or so. And I think the climate was actually a little bit different to today. I think yoga was just going mainstream in the UK. I think in the US it had been mainstream for probably quite a lot longer. But in terms of more deeper spiritual exploration, I think in this decade we're seeing a sea change, and it's starting to become more mainstream. Terms that when I was doing these celebrity interviews, you'd never hear in common parlance, if that makes sense. So I can't say there was a spiritual dimension to many of my interviews, no, but I think life stories, difficulties, challenges, the curveballs that life throws all of us were a part of my interviews. And those, in my experience, very often tend to be the catalyst to make people review their lives and think, okay, I'm looking for something deeper. I want to find more meaning to make sense of my experiences.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual vocabulary, no, definitely not. And for mainstream, fairly cynical UK newspaper, I think if I'd written about anything that was perceived as too kind of whimsical, it would have been edited out anyway. Much as I might have liked to put it in.
Well, I mean, you've only got to look at how some of the papers still turn on or against any sort of spiritual talk as such. I mean, it's let's take William Roach, for example, who's been on this show as well. I mean, heavily attacked in the papers for some of his views. I mean, of course, there's a pending court case against him, which that's only 10 days away as we speak right now. But I mean, people that are in power have some sort of power behind them. As soon as they speak anything spiritual, it is condemned sometimes. Yeah. I mean, it just is.
Yeah, I think that's true. But then I also think that's about the language you use. And I think that sometimes people talk about spirituality in a way which is maybe divorced from everyday life. And that can make the spiritual world seem slightly inaccessible, foreign, maybe a little bit off-putting for mainstream people. But for me, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is using very grounded, everyday terminology to talk about spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
To show that actually spiritual doesn't need to be separate from day-to-day life. And as I'm sure we're going to go on and talk about later, certainly my experiences of shamanism and the spiritual world is that really this is supposed to be a tool to enable us to enjoy this reality, normal life, maximally, so more, as opposed to it being kind of one or the other. And I think that in the West, that kind of divorce between the two sometimes isn't helped by the terminology that people who maybe are more spiritually inclined use. So as I say, I try to use very, I'm big about bringing the two together, because I think that can only help people. And that was very important for me in terms of my assimilating two worlds.
Absolutely. And your book, the Shaman in Stilettos, I do love the title. It's a great title. But just tell the audience, I mean, what is a shaman to begin with?
Oh, that's a great question. So a shaman is a healer who uses a range of different techniques to help clients suffering from emotional difficulties or physical symptoms such as, I don't know, acid reflux or insomnia or depression, through to excessive stress or mental chatter. Traditionally, a shaman works or sees energy and moves energy. If we look at Einstein's work, Einstein said everything is energy and that's all there is to it. This isn't philosophy, this is physics. So Einstein's work, quantum physics, really backs up what shamans have known and have been using for around 10,000 years. There's evidence in Peru, in terms of petroglyphs, cave paintings, that these techniques have been used for 10,000 years. And as I say, essentially a shaman is a doctor using very traditional techniques to address the whole person, not just the body or the mind, which tends to be the Western approach. Either you've got a mental problem or you've got a physical problem. A shaman views the person as a whole. He views any malaise as having an energetic component to it. And the aim of all shamanic techniques is to help shift those energy blocks, that energetic malaise, to recenter somebody, realign them, so that then that person can carry on with their life feeling much more peaceful, feeling much more empowered and grounded. Shamanism isn't about a belief system per se. It's non-didactic, so you don't have to believe Y or do X for the rest of your life. It's very much about, it's highly pragmatic. Somebody comes along, this is the problem. The shaman will, as I say, work with energy to help address that problem, alleviate it, let it go, and then you get on with your life.
So this can be a physical problem as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of clients who suffer from anxiety-related disorders. So I have a journalist from the Sunday Times who came to work with me recently, and she was suffering from palpitations, and she'd had heart palpitations. She'd had a number of tests with various specialists to try and identify if there were any heart irregularities. She'd had a number of scans, MRI scans, etc. They all came back as completely clear, inconclusive. She and I worked on anxiety, and using a range of techniques both together over a period of 2 half-day sessions, and that she was then able to reproduce, she's now symptom-free. So very much shamanic techniques can be used to address physical issues, but from the shamanic perspective, any physical symptoms are really a stress manifestation. So they're an emotional malaise, an emotional problem that's manifesting physically.
So it's dealing with the emotional side as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I see from the pictures that we've just had up there as well, one of them is the you work with crystals to do some of the healing as well, don't you?
Absolutely. Yep, I use crystals and I use sound to shift energy. Energy vibrates at different frequencies, so sound is a very good way. When a sound wave meets a light wave, both are changed. So sound is a very good way of working, and crystals work in a similar fashion to move energy. And you can help shift, if somebody's feeling a lot of stress, or maybe they're not aware of it, but they've got IBS or, stress headaches, whatever it might be. Yeah. Those two tools are a very good way of helping somebody quickly to just let go of the emotion, and then you'll see that the body will come back into alignment and those symptoms will disappear.
I wonder what it is about crystals as well. There's something that very purifying about them, isn't there?
Most definitely. And crystals are very, in my book it explains crystals are the oldest objects on the planet. And they've lived through a host of different geographies, different environments. And in the shamanic tradition, nothing is insentient because everything is energy. In other words, waves of moving light vibrating at different frequencies. So crystals, given the number of environments they've lived in, are some of the wisest objects on the planet. And when we use them on our bodies, different crystals have different properties. They're supremely effective at enabling us to just let go of whatever energy blocks we're holding. So quartz, for example, it's the most regular, structured substance on the planet. It's fantastic. If you've got a headache, put quartz on your head, lie down for 10 minutes. It will go a long way. It's like a natural alternative to a Nurofen.
Yeah,
very effective.
Well, I'm gonna start, getting some crystals in because I'm one of those guilty people that just, pop the headache tablets and, hope for the best. But some of the drugs we take nowadays, they cannot do our bodies any good. So to sort of rebalance ourselves, with the kind of work that you do is, I think it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, lots to talk about, but let's just move this on to the sort of turning point that you had then. So, you're taking a step back, is that right, from a busy career, and you go to Peru?
Absolutely right. Interestingly, the stress of celebrity journalism was creating some tummy problems for me. And as you say, it was those physical symptoms that made me, on the advice of my doctor, decide to take a 3-month sabbatical. And on a complete whim, I decided to go to Peru, having picked up a leaflet in my yoga studio. The woman that I went with suggested that I meet a shaman. Initially, I was very, very, very cynical. I saw myself as a kind of hardcore hacker. I know what I'm about. I know what the world's about. Don't try and mess with me in terms of a shaman. I thought a shaman would be probably somebody who meditated for 20 hours a day, lived on his own in a cave, had no material possessions, supremely enlightened. And I saw myself as absolutely the reverse. Loving fashion, loving going out, loving socializing. Yes, being spiritual, but being very plugged in to the first world. And the idea of meditating all day was kind of completely abhorrent to me, particularly at that phase in my life. But my friend went on and on about it. And in the end, I just thought, okay, fine. I relented. I went to see this guy for 4 days. And I honestly thought, this is going to be a complete waste of time. And it'll be a traveling anecdote I can tell my grandchildren when I'm old. Instead, it turned out to be something quite different.
Well, yeah, because, how long did you stay over there initially?
I was there for 3 months.
Did you plan the 3 months? Was that meant to be 3 months?
I was going to stay. I was spending 2 weeks with my friend. I was going to spend 4 days with the shaman, do a bit of trekking, and then I was going to come home. And actually, after meeting him, I decided I would spend my whole 3 months in Peru with him. Initially, I felt I was really intrigued by him. And I suppose what I should say at this point is that he confounded my expectations. He was extremely plugged into technology. He had an iPhone and he had an Apple Mac. And he wore great clothes and he spoke 6 languages and he was extremely good looking. So the moment I met him, I was like, my gosh, really? Really? You're a healer? He was also an archaeologist, so he was a really fascinating person. And he felt very early on that he wanted to teach me. And I think when I decided I was going to spend the entire sabbatical with him, I wasn't really interested in learning from him per se. I hadn't formulated it like that. I just thought he was fascinating and I thought his worldview was incredible. And he really helped me with my tummy problems. I had no difficulties with my tummy from after I met him until I left. So for me, having suffered from regular tummy cramps for about 18 months while I was at the Mail, that was a complete volte-face. And that really made me sit up and think, wow, I want to understand a bit more about this guy and about what he's doing and what his power is. I found it very intriguing.
Absolutely, and the proof was in the pudding straight away. So, okay, well, stay tuned and we're going to be right back after this short break.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the Moore Show website.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome back. I'm currently joined by the author of the Shaman in Stilettos, Anna Hunt, whose life was transformed from being a Cambridge graduate and a celebrity interviewer to one of the highest-selling newspapers in Britain to finding inner peace within herself. Anna, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Anna, when you first met this shaman, did you feel yourself finally finding a balance of what you call inner peace?
I'd say fairly shortly afterwards. As I mentioned, I was suffering from quite severe tummy cramps when I first took a sabbatical from the Mail on Sunday and went to Peru. And what Maximo Morales, the shaman, was able to achieve within a couple of days of my arriving was my having a pain-free tummy. And that, for me, was a huge transformation because I'd been waking up with tummy cramps for well over a year. And I would say that getting rid of them very much was a big step in the right direction towards feeling much more peaceful within myself, and happier.
And what does inner peace feel like? I mean, are you just not, when things go wrong in life, does it not affect you as much? Is anger less? Do you blame people less?
Well, these are great questions. I'm now a practicing shaman in London. I've been studying with my teacher for 10 years, and I now have a portfolio of international clients. And what I would say shamanism has given me in terms of inner peace is the ability, when I feel emotions, I'm human like everyone else, I'm not some enlightened being who doesn't feel anything. I can get angry, sad, frustrated, whatever else. But what shamanism's given me is the ability to master those emotions by creating space around them, to let them go before I kick off at somebody or have an interaction with somebody, if that makes sense. So I think if I look at myself when I was working full-time as a journalist, I was very run by my emotions. And that would impact how I interacted with people and also my quality of life. If I, on the tube, on the way to work, somebody was aggressive and rude, that could have, if it was then compounded by somebody being similar in the office, that could ruin my morning. Whereas now, I know how to cut those emotions off at the beginning, create the space, let them go, so that then they don't affect the rest of my day or the rest of my week or whatever it might be. So in that sense, I'm a lot stronger than I was when I was working as an interviewer, and I'm able to connect to a more peaceful place, and that's what I aim to give my clients.
Okay, and just briefly tell us a bit about the training that you went through for the first 3 months of being in Peru.
Well, the training's kind of continued, as I say, for the last 10 years. And it has involved learning how to work with my hands to move energy. So that involves working using acupressure. You use the same meridians as a Chinese acupuncturist, but you're moving qi or prana, or what in the shamanic tradition is called energy. I've learned how to prepare a lot of herbs, a lot of herbal remedies, plant remedies, to help people suffering from different problems. I've learned how to, what shamans call see with the heart. That's seeing people's auras, seeing people's energy. So let's say somebody's carrying a lot of sadness. I will see that physically, maybe in somebody's chest, or it may be in somebody's tummy, or it may be in somebody's throat, depending on the particular quality of the emotion they're holding. And then I know how to help somebody release that emotion, not through a talking therapy, which is, I suppose what a lot of analysis or Western approaches involves, talking through the story quite a few times, but from a much more organic, I suppose, perspective, in terms of just helping somebody let that energy go. And before we were talking about crystals, and I alluded to sound as well. Those are very effective ways of enabling somebody, if they've got blocks, they're carrying a lot of sadness, to release it, to let it go, and then to feel much more grounded and much freer, much lighter, much calmer, more peaceful as they go forward in their lives.
And obviously, being in Peru, you must have been surrounded by some beautiful landscapes. I mean, again, being in Mother Nature, that surely changed you as well.
Very much so. And Peru is home to 28 of the world's 32 ecosystems. So the amazing thing about Peru is that you've got such variety in terms of the climates and the environments available to you. I've worked with shamans in the desert in the north of Peru. I've worked with shamans in the jungle, both in the north and in the south of Peru. I've worked with people from the high Andes, from the very high Andes. They're all completely different topographies. So you've got a huge variety of different environments that you can explore and experience, and different shamanic traditions that have grown up in those very different cultures, very different environments. So it's a fascinating place. And as you say, it's a place where I think nature, for me, is quite wild and untamed in Peru, and I find that very compelling.
Yeah, I mean, just, again, being surrounded by these people that must be just very humble with what they've got as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're so materialistic, aren't we?
Absolutely. We are. And I think that, while capitalism can be great in terms of it enables a relative meritocracy and we can all work hard to better ourselves and to achieve our goals, I think at the core of capitalism is this concept that we're not enough. I will be enough if I get a promotion at work. I will be enough if I buy that super expensive face cream, which is going to mean I don't have wrinkles and therefore my husband's going to fancy me for the next decade. I will be enough if I read that particular parenting manual so that I can become the ultimate pin-up yummy mummy. And I think in contrast, in Peru, they have a much closer connection with nature. They don't strive so much. These are kind of the native people. Don't strive so much in the way we do. So they have a natural peace with their environment, with the cycles of life, with getting older, just with the general challenges that come along. And I think, all of us who live in the city, I don't know about you, but I think very often the moment you leave the city and you just get out and spend time in nature, you can feel yourself decompressing almost without doing anything. It's just getting into that green space. And I think for us, it can be harder to actually spend meaningful time in nature. Whereas in Peru, a lot of the indigenous people that I've met, they spend time in nature every single day because they're part of farming communities. That's their livelihood.
And again, meditation, is that key to, shamanistic or being a shaman? Is that important?
I think mental discipline is important. But one of the things that I remember loving was when Maximo said to me, my culture's quite lazy, so we don't go in for extended meditation or extended kind of hard disciplines. So I would say that the visualization and meditation aspect of shamanism tends to be quite kind of deep but quick, as opposed to meditating for hours and hours and hours. That's much more tradition associated with the East.
Okay. Now we've got a text that's come in. The text says, I do agree that the energy you give out is important. I'm always trying to give out positive energy, but sometimes my partner is so stressed and frustrated, and his energy would feed into mine. How do I deal with someone else's energy and not let it affect me?
Okay, that's a great question. The fundamental shamanic belief, if I can call it that, is that we need to release. So in the same way as if you drink a glass of water, you need to go to the bathroom. If you breathe in, you have to breathe out. In the same way, we take on energy throughout the day, positive and negative. You can't hold on to it. We need to release it. Going back to what we were just saying about spending time in nature, spending time in nature is the best way to release, just to let go of any stress or any kind of that kind of energy that's kind of trying to get in. Best way. Go outside, have a long walk, be mindful when you're walking, be really aware of the environment. You don't need to do that for an extended period of time, maybe 10 minutes. But just giving yourself that time to decompress on your own, be present, be mindful, can really help when you're trying desperately to be positive and good and all those great things, and you feel that there's an energy that's bothering you.
Moving on to energy as well, as you mentioned there, do you feel from the person you are now that you have a sort of a greater connection to some sort of greater reality as well?
I can't actually. Right, could you mind repeating that, please?
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. No. Do you feel that you have a connection to a greater reality now? Now that that you've done your training, do you feel a connection with what some people may call the source?
Definitely. I think what shamanism has given me is an understanding that we're all part of this great tapestry, but in a very kind of tangible way. Not in a pretentious way, in a very real way. So that's given me a real sense of belonging, particularly to nature, and as you say, to the source, to the animating consciousness behind everything. Absolutely. And that's supremely comforting and at the same time very empowering. It's a very dynamic thing to experience.
Absolutely. And shamans, as shamans go in Peru, I mean, how many to a village? I mean, how many to a specific area?
Well, traditionally you'd have one shaman to a village. So I work with one shaman in a community outside Iquitos. Iquitos is in the north of Peru in the Amazon jungle. And he serves a community of 300. That's a fairly traditional setup.
Okay, well, 300. Well, that's a lot of people to
It's a lot of
to
people.
to be
It's a lot
looking
of
after.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and but there's also I've read in your work as well. There's the witchcraft practitioners as well.
Yep, that's right. There are brujas, witches, but witches, I think, can have in our culture kind of Christian connotations of evil and so on and so forth. Really, a bruja is just a different kind of shaman who uses slightly different tools. But as I say, the underlying kind of common denominator between all shamanic traditions and all shamans, whether they're from the desert or from the high Andes, the mountains, is that they are trying to move energy to effect change in our experience of life, the external world.
Do you ever come across problems of people that say they want help, yet they they're not ready for it. They don't want to move on.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing that I love about kind of the shamanic traditions is that a shaman isn't God. A shaman can only help somebody who wants to help themselves. And I blend shamanic techniques with other techniques that draw on cutting edge quantum physics. I alluded a tiny bit earlier to Einstein's work. With all of those techniques, I can facilitate you to do the work that you are ready to do, that you want to do. I can't do it for you. And for me, that's supremely sensible, and it empowers people, because it's not about you've got to keep coming back to the guru to, alleviate whatever problems you've got. It's about you learning techniques which you can then reproduce for yourself. I think I find that aspect of my work supremely gratifying. And as you say, people will go to the level they want to go to. That's up to each client's choice.
So going back to your home here as well, back in the UK. Yeah. How did your family take aboard the news of your transformation? I mean, were they very supportive? Were your friends supportive as well?
No, at first, absolutely not. I think they were coming from a very good place, which was trying to protect me from making a huge mistake, particularly when I came back from my first trip to Peru. And I tried desperately to slot myself back into journalism. I really needed to earn money. And I tried to slot myself back into my life kind of as it had been beforehand, before I went. When I eventually, 18 months later, decided, okay, I can't do this, I'm going to go back to Peru, I'm going to take up Maximo's offer to study with him, and I'm going to write a book, because that's the only way I can kind of try and start to bridge those two worlds and make this a responsible choice. I think my family and my good friends were extremely cynical and really did try to talk me out of it. For the reasons that I've said, I think they thought that I was making a huge mistake and it was all going to kind of crash and burn, and I was going to be left with egg on my face.
Yeah, but the transformation that took place in yourself at that time, I mean, you probably just couldn't stop talking about it. I mean, you probably were so, it was such an amazing time at that initial change that, it's either accepted, I suppose, or don't accept me.
Yeah, but I think actually that confidence probably came later.
Do you think
because
so, yeah?
When I was making those decisions, I did listen very much to what my friends and family said, because I respect them, I love them. And it did cause me to kind of, probably in a very good way, to really question, okay, is this the right thing, or am I making a mistake? And that meant that I made a very definite decision, as opposed to just being kind of carried by the river and thinking, okay, well, I'll suck it and see, let's, throw caution to the wind and off I go. I made a very definite choice to go back to Peru to study with Maximo. And when I got back to Peru to study with him, he started playing a lot of games with me. Great for my book and for the story, but in, the actual moment, extremely difficult for me to cope with. He eluded me for 2 months. This man that I'd gone to study with, who'd said, I definitely want to teach you, you're going to be, an amazing shaman in your own right. And then he's just not there. And I'm in this foreign country on my own. There's another apprentice who is quite competitive. It was my worst nightmare. And I think actually the cynicism of my family and friends, because it forced me to really front up what I was doing, probably gave me the determination to see through those 2 months and to handle some of the challenges when I went back to Peru much better than I would have otherwise been able to.
Why did he do that for? Why had he avoided you?
That's a very good question. I think that, a shaman in the traditional definition is a man or woman of power. And I think that power is acquired in all of us through challenge, through adversity, through developing our own kind of really strong sense of self and sense of direction. And I think that Maximo was making me stand up and be counted and really demonstrate to him how much I wanted to learn, and my commitment to learn, because I really had to, and the way I dealt with it when he just wasn't there and there was this other apprentice who was kind of constantly on my back, blah, 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 was to approach it very much as a journalistic proposition. And I interviewed every single shaman that I could find. I interviewed 40 shamans in total.
Wow.
And all of that research has gone into my book and
Yeah.
gave me huge insight. But when I initially thought I was going back to Peru to study with him, the idea of interviewing a load of other shamans didn't even enter my head. So I think it actually probably gave me a really strong foundation that he did play those games. And in doing all those interviews and in meeting a lot of other shamans and starting to piece together myself the common denominator between all these very disparate traditions, I won his respect, and I demonstrated to him that I really do want this and I really am serious and you need to take me seriously. I'm not going to kick and scream about it because that's not going to work with you, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to go home with my tail between my legs and just think, oh, I've made a huge mistake. And the moment he actually really saw that determination in me, he started teaching me very, very quickly, and I learnt an awful lot.
So that training, again, after that process, was very different to the initial training?
It built on it, but we went a lot deeper. And when I was talking about, seeing with the heart, seeing into people, seeing their energy, seeing what emotions they're carrying, starting to feel people's emotions in my own body, which is a very good way, a very useful tool a shaman has to really be able to relate to clients, to help clients. It was much more intense than it had been first time around. And I really learned how to move energy in people. So if somebody had a headache, I could use my hands to get rid of it quickly. If somebody was suffering from deeper emotional malaise, let's say some childhood traumas, I learnt tools to be able to help somebody to gently release that. So it was at a much deeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break now, but after the break, the phone lines will be open for you to speak to Anna Hunt or share your opinion. You can call us on 0292 000 3666 or text your comments and questions to 07728 758 759. International listeners outside the UK may Skype the show by adding The More Show live, or you may choose to interact with us on Facebook and Twitter.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The More Show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm currently joined by author of Shaman in Stilettos, Anna Hunt, whose life was transformed from being a Cambridge graduate and a celebrity interviewer for one of the highest selling newspapers in Britain to finding inner peace within herself. Anna, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Anna, just tell us a bit about again, your time in Peru and the children that you met there as well, and the photographs that you took.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you're showing a photo now of two beautiful children that I met in Manu. Manu is a national park in the south of Peru, in the Amazon rainforest. It's pristine rainforest, very, very beautiful place. And these two children were part of a local community that I met during a 7-day trek. Extremely inaccessible to get to their village, and they don't have very much contact with outsiders, certainly not white blonde women. And I met these two children with their parents, and I was chatting to them because they spoke Spanish. I had a banana and I gave it to the eldest one, the little girl. And the little boy came along and he was looking at it. She was peeling the fruit. And the father said very clearly, you need to give your brother half to the little girl. And I was expecting, as you would in England, for them both to have a bit of a squabble about it and for the little girl to be like, no, this is my banana, you're not having any of it. And instead, she broke it in half and she gave him the bigger half. And once they'd finished eating, I asked if I could take their photo. And they'd not seen a camera before, and because it was a digital camera, I was able to show them their picture, which they found incredible. And their mum thought it was incredible too. So that was a really special moment. And they're very, very poor. You can see that they're wearing, ripped clothes. But they had a contentment that I think many children and parents of children in the West would be envious of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that you've been through is such a life-changing experience, and you can never be the same person. You're not the same person.
No.
No.
But I think there are elements of the old me. But I suppose it's almost like I've expanded into a bigger me, maybe, than when I was just a celebrity hack.
A transformation.
Yeah,
Well, talking about the celebrity, journalistic side of you before, I mean, I take it then, there was a period of change in your work as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I still work as a journalist. I write for glossies and I write for various newspapers. But now I write health features or features more around the work that I do. The majority of my time today is spent working with private clients. I travel a lot internationally, and I also work with corporations using shamanic techniques, but also various quantum physics techniques. So one of the most recent corporations I've been working with is Greenpeace. And I work with top-level executives and their teams if they're going through change, that kind of thing. So there's still kind of that, I suppose, that kernel of the journalism that I still do, and I still love that world. But my life does look very different to when I was working full-time on a features desk. And,
I mean, how many shamans are there in general in the UK? Because I've not come across many.
And that's a great question. In the Catholic Inquisition, during the Catholic Inquisition in the Middle Ages, most of the native shamanic or pagan traditions throughout Europe were stamped out. The Inquisition was very successful. And therefore, we've lost that lineage. In Peru, in South America, there was no such thing. So, as I said right at the beginning, these traditions have been passed down orally from shaman to shaman for around 10,000 years in Peru. There aren't shamans that have studied in the traditional fashion in England. Certainly, I don't think I've come across any. I'm sure that there may be some, but it's much more common in someone like Peru or various countries in South America, or indeed in Asia, Australasia. In Europe, it's much harder to come by people who've learnt in the traditional manner.
Okay, and something we didn't cover in the other part as well was honouring the land as well. And giving back to the land. Just tell us about this process quickly, please.
Okay, so I think you've got an image of a despacho, and a despacho is performed by shamans from Queros, which is in the high Andes, and it's an offering to Mother Earth. And before you do anything, in our case it might be launching a new business, in their case it might be harvesting a crop or planting a crop, you will make a despacho to the earth, and you will offer things to the earth in exchange for her benevolence and her luck, good fortune around whatever new thing you're embarking on. It could be a relationship, having a baby, whatever it is. The despacho that you can see is a very precise collection of different objects, all to petition the earth. So it's a kind of form of bartering, but in a very sophisticated and gentle way. So things that go into a despacho range from candies, the earth likes sugar, likes sweetness, through to gold. Gold represents wisdom, so you'll have gold coins, gold chocolate coins, through to silver dragées. Silver represents knowledge and also hard work, through to the cotton wool that you can see, which represents the snow. Loads of different things, corn, seeds to represent growth, but all with the aim of, as I say, feeding our mother, the earth, in the hope that she will then grant a benevolent good fortune for any new project we're embarking on.
Okay, so there's that belief in the shamans then that Mother Earth is very conscious.
Very conscious and extremely powerful. In terms of climate change, shamans, absolutely, we're messing with Mother Earth and we're reaping what we've sown. But shamans believe that the earth is all powerful and that whatever is happening now, the earth is ultimately much wiser than any human being could ever conceive of. So this is all meant to be happening.
Okay, well, we just got another text that's come in as well. It reads, how is it possible to find inner peace and trust that everything will be all right when we're struggling to pay the bills, working on jobs just for the sake of paying what's needed, and worrying? It's easy when the people in Peru have less life worries. What about people living in the cities?
Oh, I think that that's not fair to say that people in Peru have less life worries. I think they frame existence differently. I've seen people in Peru struggling to feed themselves one meal a day. So I think making inner peace conditional on the material wealth, and I mean that across the board, whether that's in terms of relationships or in terms of money, that we might enjoy in our life is where we go wrong. Because actually inner peace doesn't have to be dependent on our material experience of reality. And I think that what I learned from Peru and what a lot of those very wise but very simple Peruvians taught me is that you can have richness beyond measure and actually you can be living just above the poverty line, and in terms of art, what we consider the breadline, way below it.
So if you look at things with different eyes sometimes, what may look to be a complete mess is absolutely perfect. It's just the way you look at it, and it looks
Absolutely.
back.
Exactly. Everything's one's perspective. And, quantum physics teaches that you don't have a particle without a locally or non-locally related antiparticle. What that means is that whatever we might perceive as really bad, really dire, really difficult, horrible, dreadful, there is always the other side. And I think sometimes just knowing that can be enough. But you can also ask yourself questions to balance up your perception so you see the other side. And going back to what I was saying earlier about nature, simple things that don't cost anything in terms of money, but just taking time out to do simple things, going for a walk with somebody that you love, taking time out to read your children a bedtime story, all that kind of stuff can reconnect us with those true peaceful values which are available all the time. Peace and money I really don't think the one follows the other.
You use a lot of the word being in the moment or being in the now. Is that just, what does it mean to you to be in the now or be in the moment?
Well, essentially, I suppose that's having not having excessive mental chatter where you're either worrying about the future or regretting the past. So a lot of people, what stops us being present is that we've got mental loops going on. Okay, I'm with this person now, but in half an hour's time, I've got to go and pick up my child from school. And then when I get home and I put the kids to bed, I need to be, in my case, working on that feature. And then, I can probably just about get 6 hours sleep if I go to bed at 12. Then I've got to get up at 6 because I want to go to the gym before I start all my chores tomorrow. That kind of stuff. Or being with somebody and they're talking about a relationship and your mind goes back to an experience you had that was similar in the past, but actually you messed it up or that person messed it up, and that whole loop can start.
Yeah.
Those are the things that stop us being present. Being present is the ability to actually just be where you are and to experience life fully in that moment. And as I say, one of the best ways to be present is to be outside. And to be mindful, to really focus on who you're with and the environment around you.
And just breathing as well.
Completely. Being mindful.
Fresh air.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Without getting too personal here as well, did your, as you went through this transformation, did your viewing partners change, or have you had the same partner since?
Did my viewing partners change? My partner did change after...
As you changed, basically, yeah.
Exactly. But I'm not sure that the qualities that I look for in a partner have changed. As I say, I think that this transformation has kind of like enabled me to expand to include all of me. But I'm still the same core person. And I think that's a very important aspect of the way I've been taught shamans traditionally are. First and foremost, they're human, enjoying a human existence, relationships, friendships, food, all the things that make life fantastic. Plus, they have this healing gift, which through discipline and a lot of hard work, they polish so that it becomes a real asset to their community, their society. I've expanded as opposed to kind of completely changed. And there are certain things that I've always found attractive qualities in people. And those things persist, for sure.
As you've gone through this transformation period, become more spiritual in a sense, and with the work that you do, the healing work, have you wanted to go out there and change the world, or has it been a case you've realised that you change the world by changing yourself?
I think what you've just said is very wise. I think there's a beautiful phrase by Mother Teresa, the late Mother Teresa, where she said, "My work is just a drop in the ocean. But if that drop didn't exist, the ocean would have one drop less." And I think the work is always about oneself. And, the more work I do on myself, the more present I'm able to be, the better I am for my clients, the better I am for my friends, for my community and so on. But I don't think I've ever felt that I can change the world. I think my shamanic work comes from a humbler place, which is I just want to do the best I can and be the best I can for the people around me. I'm deeply committed to shamanic techniques. I think they are powerful. I think they are transformative. I think they can reconnect people with a sense of meaning, a sense of peace in a way that other techniques I've explored can't, certainly within the same time frame. And I follow the river, so I will travel anywhere to share what I've learnt with people, but from a place of humility. I've met some incredibly powerful healers. I think I'm very lucky to be on the path. I'm nowhere near as amazing as they are, but I'm on the path, and that's an amazing thing. I find that very inspiring.
No, I think it's fantastic, the work that you're doing. And where do you see, your work as a shaman in the future? What you'd like to do in the not too distant future?
I think this year I'm doing a lot more international travel, both in the States and Canada, and a lot in Europe. And I think really I just want to, as I say, follow the river, and through every media available to me, whether it's writing or public speaking, talking to people like you, whatever, to try and sow a seed in listeners or my audience, which might make them pick up a book or come to one of my talks or maybe go and find another shaman to work with or whatever. But just, I see myself as a seed sower to just try and open up this world and this mystery, which I think can give so much back to people in a very tangible way.
Yes, absolutely. And with an emotional healing process there as well. And do you have any upcoming workshops and talks in the UK?
Yes, I do. So I'm doing a talk for alternatives on the 20th of May, 20th of this month. And I'm doing a workshop for them in June. And I'm also appearing at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival again at the end of May. I've got a raft of workshops coming up, as I said, throughout the summer, throughout Europe and in North America and Canada. There are details on my website, annahunt.com. And I have a number of retreats in Spain, and my retreats are really an opportunity to do a transformative experience, to do really deep transformative work over a period of 4 days. I've got one in June, which is sold out, but I have 2 in September. So as I say, all the details are on my website, and I've got a lot of things coming up over the next 6 months.
Okay, and is there Facebook links on there as well?
Absolutely, yes. You can come via the Shaman in Stilettos has a Facebook page. There are loads of Facebook, Twitter links on my website too. So I'd be delighted to connect with people in that way.
Okay, well, Anna Hunt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Well, stay tuned, as after the break I'll be joined by radio host and author Mystic Pete. Plus, we'll also be listening to some of his tunes that's coming up, so stay tuned.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.